Some words are more specific than others, and I liken it to every word has a molecular weight. And let's put them on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being the least specific terms or words, and 10 being the most specific that you can get. For example, thing, stuff, and get. We're going to put those on the 0 end of the spectrum because thing, stuff, and get have no edges. If there were 100 people in a room and we were all asked to picture a thing, we would all picture something differently. So terms that have no edges, have no clear picture, those are zeros. As we move up the scale and become more specific in the words that we choose to use, our words start to gain weight. We move from thing to plant. A more specific term, but still we can be more specific. Vegetable, that's a more specific term than a plant. It's a kind of plant. Green vegetable, as we add color, we become even more specific. And then we get to kale, which is about an 8. We're almost there, but there are many different kinds of kale, so we can become even more specific with the term dinosaur kale, which is a 10. There's nothing else like it. And there's also the Latin name, lacinato. It's the same thing, but where we choose to use these 10s would differ. If I was creating an elementary school cafeteria menu, I would want to use the term dinosaur kale because it's got the word dinosaur right in it and kids love dinosaurs. Versus lacinato is something that you would say for someone who actually knows what this is. Probably a horticulturist or a botanist or someone like that. This is important in poetry because we want to move back and forth between less specific moments and very specific moments. If we had all zeros in a poem, there would be no pictures for our brain to latch onto. So we want the 10s, but we don't want the poem to be all 10s. A document that's all 10s is something like a contract or instructions for building a bridge, where there is absolutely no room for ambiguity. And we want to sort of slalom back between those zeros and 10s, as Sylvia Plath does in this poem, Morning Song, for her baby. And as we look through the poems, a term like fat gold watch, that's a 10. Right up at the top, we have midwife and slapped. Those are very distinct terms. They're 8s or 9s. Then we have the phrase in blue, took its place among the elements. So we start in a specific spot and we move almost to clouds. This is like a 0. There's no shape in here. So she gives us a picture and then she dissolves it in that line, took its place among the elements. And then the 110 that really stands out for me in this is Victorian nightgown. It's a glaring 10. And one thing that we could do as poets is we can put those 10s together and make things that don't exist in the real world, but they're so certain it feels like they're real, which she does throughout the poem. Bald and cry. Those are 2 very distinct words, and she puts them together. It doesn't make literal sense, it makes figurative sense. And that's what we could do when we put 2 10s together that you wouldn't ordinarily see, like moth breath, cow heavy, and the last line, the clear vowels rise like balloons. We have clear vowels and rising like balloons. We know what those things are, but to see them together is really one of the pleasures of writing poetry, to create something that feels real but doesn't exist. So think about when you're moving back and forth between 0s and 10s, and think about doing it purposefully, moving from the clouds to the concrete and back again.